Praise be to the Lord Jesus Christ, and welcome to Catholic Forum. My name is Jeff Dunstan. With me today are representatives from Legatus. Now, Legatus is a Latin word, for the ambassadors. Now, at the beginning of our show, we see several images of our church, our buildings that we live in, but we as church, as people, are the ambassadors of those buildings to some extent, but more so to the ideas of those buildings, the ideas that we as Catholics have and are trying to live by and are trying to spread and teach. And again, today I have several representatives from Legatus, an organization that does that and takes as its name that duty, that role. With me today is Kate Suave.
Thank you for having us.
And Mike Holleran. And John Birch. Welcome to Catholic Forum. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Great to be here.
Thank you. And now, Legatus hasn't been around terribly long. It's within our lifetimes. But what's the origins of Legatus? The idea has been there. What about the organization, though?
Well, the organization was started in 1987 by Tom Monahan, who is the owner of Domino's Pizza. And he was at a private mass with Pope John Paul II, and after the Mass, he and the Pope were talking, and the Pope was interested in starting a Catholic organization of business leaders that could affect other people that they were working with, that could go out and evangelize and spread the words of Christ. So he talked to Tom Monahan, and Tom Monahan, on the way home in his plane, was getting all of these inspirations from the Holy Spirit and came up with Legatus as we know it today. So it's been around since 1987.
So 1987, Pope John Paul II, but maybe 15 years later, passed away. So how much of the result did he see in his lifetime from that conversation?
He passed away in 2005. So around 2005, we probably had 55 to 60 chapters of Legatus throughout the United States. Currently, Legatus has well in excess of 80 chapters. We are in Dublin, Ireland. We are also all over Canada. And we have 4,000 plus members. So,
okay. What makes up a chapter? How is that defined?
A chapter is defined as 20 couples. When it reaches 20 couples in any particular geographical area, that's when they become what they say chartered and are basically, on their own. They just, at that point, break away from Legatus International. Let me go back. When we are first taking a look at a city, we will go into a city and we work with Legatus International, and we begin calling couples. It's kind of a grassroots movement. People who know people invite people and see what the viability of starting up a membership in a particular city is. We grow that to 20 plus couples, and at 20 plus couples, at that point we become a chartered Legatus chapter, and from there we continue growing.
It ties back to Tom Monahan's initial vision of having a group of Catholic leaders, and as he was initially envisioning it, it was Catholic CEOs of large organizations. And so, as Kate said, when you come into a market, you're looking for that local Catholic leadership. And the reason he was envisioning Catholic lay leaders, CEOs, is that they impact or can have an impact on a lot of lives. And to bring our faith into our business, professional, and personal lives, we come together to study and to live and to spread that faith in all three areas of our life: business, professional, and personal.
That's the mission?
That is the mission, yes. Yeah.
Okay. Now, the idea of reaching out to other people, and it seems that the picking CEOs, I mean, you already have a leader as figure. Now, do most of those people see themselves as Catholic leader too?
Well, I would hope that most of them do, but to the extent that they don't, that's one purpose of Legatus, to help them start to recognize that we don't leave our faith at the doorstep when we leave in the morning or at a church after Mass or Eucharistic adoration, but that we're Catholics 24/7, and that includes in the workplace. And all the values that we hold dear in our family life and our church life are the same values that we need to apply in the workplace.
Mm-hmm. So is that person to person? Is it how I run the business? Is it what I do with my business?
Oh, it's absolutely both.
Yeah.
Certainly when you run into an individual, this is what Pope Francis is calling us to do, right? Is to treasure them, love them, show them what you have that they might want. Personal relationship with Jesus Christ and a love for the Catholic faith. But even from an organizational perspective, and we can get into this more a little bit later when we talk about some of the materials that we give our members and the talks that we have. But you've got certain obligations that the way that you pay your employees, the way that you market and price your products, the way that you deal with reductions in force, all those things. Catholic principles really have a lot to bear on all those things.
So, things like acting with integrity or, treating people with dignity and respect, promoting positive relationships, those are all part of us as being Catholics, and it's a great way to run your business and impact people. And like John said, even in the times where it's not so fun, where we've had reduction in force, treating people with dignity and respect is extremely critical at that point. It ties back to the leader. If they have that strong, deep faith and they can apply it in that workplace, it does help, as opposed to not having any faith at all or being very hard on the way you cut and let go of people.
Mm-hmm. Now, not to be too controversial, but to be topical, does that sort of tie into, it's the Catholic leaders, the Catholic CEOs who have come up against things like the Affordable Care Act and saying, we as Catholics see it inappropriate to pay for this. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So is
that's a good example. In fact, I think you would find that among the dozens of lawsuits that were filed challenging the contraceptive mandate that the HHS imposed as part of the Affordable Care Act, that a very large percentage of those were businesses run by Legatus members. And in fact, the Legatus organization was one of the plaintiffs in a case over in Ann Arbor. That's exactly what Legatus is all about, is taking the faith, trying to explain to other people what it means. The contraceptive aspect of our beliefs is not one that's widely shared or even really known well about. And then informing and educating the public and bringing these lawsuits to make sure that our religious liberty is honored. Mm-hmm. So absolutely, it's really topical today, when not only with the Affordable Care Act, but in many ways you see a lot of attacks on the church and on the exercise of religious liberty.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good point. Now, when we think of CEOs, a lot of people automatically think of this rich, what is the term, the ivory towers and the Wall Street versus Main Street, all this rhetoric. We think of the rich man who approaches Jesus, and Jesus says to him, the rich man says, what do I need to do to enter the kingdom of heaven? Mm-hmm. And Jesus says, sell everything you have, give it to the poor. Right. Now, where's Legatus there?
Well, I think Legatus would absolutely recognize that God does call some people to sell everything that they own and to live in poverty, but not everyone is called to that. That there is a business vocation too. Mm-hmm. And I think an apt analogy is the story in the New Testament about the talents, where the master gives the 3 servants different amounts of talents and then goes away for a period of time. Mm-hmm. And then when he comes back, he asks each servant to demonstrate what they did with their talents. And the first servant doubled his talents, through industry and hard work. And the second servant did the same. He had a lesser amount, but he also doubled it. And the third servant just returned the talents that had been given to him because he had buried them in the ground for safekeeping, for fear that he would lose the money and then his master would be upset. The history of that story is that the talents aren't some small amount of money. These were significant resources. And how does the master then respond to those 3 servants? Well, the servant who did nothing with his talents, he sends him away and gives his talents to the other two and says, go and do something with that. And so in the same way, God has given certain people, we call them entrepreneurs in the United States, talents. And they've got an amazing ability to come up with new products and new services and how to run an organization. And they're called to use those talents in the way that God asked them to, not to hide them under the bushel basket, but to grow a business. And why is that important? Well, without business, commerce, industry, you don't have jobs for people. And without jobs, you don't have housing, you don't have shelter, you don't have food, you don't have clothing. So it's a primary obligation of those business owners to use their talents and create wealth that other people can take advantage of. Now, at the same time, you talk about the ivory tower and the fat cat. We're not called to do that. There's the other story in the New Testament where Jesus says that for a rich person, getting into heaven, it's like the camel going through the eye of the needle, and not referring to the little needle, of course, but the gate that they called the needle in the Middle East. And in order to get through that gate, the camel actually had to get down on its knees, and all the goods had to be stripped off its back, and it had to be able to then pass through that doorway. And the idea there is that we're not so attached to our material goods, to our talents, that they become more important than our relationship with God and with Jesus Christ. So as long as you're keeping that balance of not being attached to things here on earth, but storing up treasure in heaven, but yet providing for other people, that's really what Catholic CEOs and executives are called to do.
And in that story, those who exercise, leverage their talents, they were given greater responsibility. And I think, much to John's point, that responsibility means taking care of the people whose lives you impact. So what you do with that wealth and how you try to put principles over profit, but what you do with that wealth to take care of others is really what Legatus is about. But it starts with having a strong spiritual wealth, and that's where, by living and studying, especially the studying part, understanding that transformation, how do you know Christ and how can you share the love of Christ, it can apply to your businesses.
A point that you made earlier was that that Tom Monahan's intent was CEOs, but you've also brought up that it's CEOs, executives, kind of parallel with the idea of the talents. Somewhere 5, somewhere 2. So it's kind of it's not strictly that anymore. It's leadership.
Right.
To a large degree. Okay. Let's talk about the mission in action. How does Legatus express its mission?
Legatus, every single day, we are working to spread and live and embody, where we are going with our relationship with Christ, and sharing that with other people. Either through our families or through our workplace or our communities. And that is our mission. We are to evangelize. We're a lay apostolate, and we take time to study and become more informed about our faith. And therefore, we're able to pass on through conversation, through teaching our children, one step at a time, what Christ wants us to do with our lives, and we are that lay apostolate.
So we come together once a month in our chapter, and we have rosary, we have an opportunity for confessions. Our members have Mass together. We have a chaplain and a vice chaplain. Occasionally the bishop will come to a monthly meeting. And then after our Mass, we have a small social hour time. We listen to a speaker or have dinner and then listen to a speaker. And part of that whole studying and better learning our faith comes from the inspirations that by bringing in strong Catholic speakers, we learn more about our faith. And that's just one aspect of how we live it out by coming together once a month. There are regional meetings. We have one in June in Detroit where we'll have the Michigan Bishops panel. We'll talk about family and marriage, and so we'll take that in and really transform ourselves as to how do we better live our Catholic faith. And then we have international conference once a year as well.
Okay. Now, You said Tom Monahan he started this in Michigan then. How many chapters are in Michigan right now?
Well, we have, when we get together in June, there will be 6 chapters, Lansing and Grand Rapids, and then 3 Detroit and 1 Toledo. So it'll be 6 total chapters there. Now, I'm not familiar if we have any in
No, we're
North.
looking to start, I know they were looking to start some up in Gaylord and up in Traverse City, so they're expanding, they call it the Great Lakes region. So,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, great. Now, we've been talking a lot about the business aspect of Legatus and practice in business. What about the family balance? Because, again, when we think of the businessman, we often think of the workaholic. Now, do these chapters help? Are they support groups, perhaps? I don't know, to help each other, help not be?
I think there's certainly an aspect of that. Obviously, the church is not calling us to work and increase talents at the expense of our spouses and our children. That you do need to find a balance there. And I think, support group might not be quite the right word, but sounding board. That if you're struggling with some aspect of your life, and it might be work-life balance, that you've got other people, resources who have been through those same challenges and found ways to solve those problems, and you can learn from their wisdom and experience. And that's one of the great benefits of the fellowship. And one of the reasons that Tom Monahan kept this to kind of a high-level group of leaders is because together they would experience the same kind of issues, have the same kind of influence, and so in a group like that, it's really beneficial to be able to talk to each other and share about those things.
And Legatus certainly supports, helps us better lead our families as parents, husbands and wives. But Legatus isn't the answer to that. I mean, it's up to us as a couple to know our faith, to know the impact that we as role models have on our children, how to bring them up in the faith, raise them in the sacraments, to pray daily. And if we don't spend time praying daily, our children won't see that, and so they don't have that to model. And so by Legatus helping us and us networking with one another, the importance of prayer, and then modeling that for our children, attending Mass on holy days and Sundays, obviously. Those are all important aspects to how we can raise a strong Catholic family and then go out into the world. Pope John Paul II saw work as a path to heaven, and our lives, we know, we spend 40, 50, 60 hours a week in a job environment. So we must, like John said earlier, we can't compartmentalize that. We have to live our faith in our family life and in our work life, and that's how that all mission ties together.
As part of the Catholic mission, we have the idea of reaching out of the church to, Pope Francis now is very, very big on the poor. He came from poor neighborhoods. He joined the Jesuits because he wanted to be a missionary to the poor. Now, what's Legatus doing with the idea of social justice, of being even examples of not only for your family, your children, to going out to the poor, but also the business?
Well, I think there's 2 aspects to that. One is literally to go to the poor. And the church's strong tradition is that it's not the government's role to take care of those who can't take care of themselves. It's our job. As the church, we are the hands and feet of Christ. We have to do that. And I think you'd find that if you talk to Legatus members, you would see that they're enormously generous philanthropists in their local communities, spend a lot of time volunteering. We have one couple in our chapter that is just doing amazing things for the poor in Guatemala. Building churches and medical clinics and all kinds of things. It's really an inspiration for everybody who's in the group to see them do something like that, and inspires others to follow that example. So that's certainly one aspect of the social justice. But the other is social justice in the workplace itself. One of the speakers that we had recently was Dean Andrew Abelia at the business school at Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C. And he's the one who put together this book, A Catechism for Business. He was the editor with Joseph Capizzi. And that really does take the church's social teachings and applies them to business. What this book did is it took papal encyclicals and the catechism and other core doctrines of our faith and then organized them into business topics in ways that we could use them. So again, when we talk about what's a fair wage, what's a fair price, what do you do with a reduction in force? The Catholic Church has spoken about all these things, as you can imagine. And so it's our job to study and to live and spread the social justice message through the business, just like it is to spread it to the needy in our communities.
We find, even in my place of business, I feel like a lot of the values that my company espouses are very similar to the Catholic faith. And so being out in the community, whether you're helping with like a Habitat for Humanity or a United Way, the Franciscan Life Process Center, it gives us an opportunity as employees to take some time away, and our company affords that time away so that we can be helping those in need. And even more recently, our pastor, our parish, for our confirmandes, sponsors in the confirmandi will do a community event together. And so when you can get out, like John said, to be hands and feet on the street, that influences your life probably more than it influences the people you think you're helping.
Yeah. Excuse me. What about what's coming up as far as future ideas, plans for Legatus?
We are growing chapters right now throughout the Great Lakes region. I think the more chapters that we can open and the more cities that we can go into and the people's lives that we can touch, just being able to evangelize and give back to particular communities, like John and Michael were talking about, that's where we're at right now. We take a look at, for instance, the state. I know that Michigan has only grown into 6 over the past 3 years. Before that, there were just a couple that were down in Detroit. So we're looking to add more and more and more so we can do more for the communities that we're in.
Now, why would you say it's important for an executive or CEO to think this is important for me to be involved in?
I just couldn't see why an executive wouldn't think that it would be important to be involved in it. You have to take into account the people's lives that you are touching as a CEO, as well as your community, as well as the people that work for you. Am I making the ethical decisions? Am I making the correct decisions based on the information that I have? So that people can be affected for the good, so that Christ's message can come through. To all the people that someone may touch. So.
And the study portion of that too should be important to every CEO, business owner, community leader. We try really hard with our programming, with our speakers every month, to really touch on a wide diversity of topics. And we have a lot of national speakers. Matthew Kelly was here last year. Curtis Martin is coming next month. But if you kind of look at what we're focused on, it's not just about the ethics of running a business and how your faith can interrelate with that. We've got coming to talk about relics and relic veneration. We've got someone coming in to talk about Catholic bioethics. We've got someone coming in from Catholic Voices, which is a group dedicated to training lay people how to communicate with the general public in a way that they can understand easily Catholic principles, so that when the big Supreme Court case breaks or some other issue comes up in the news, that you could have a lay Catholic leader talk to the newspaper or the TV station and explain why it is we believe what we believe. So these are really valuable things, the kinds of knowledge that you need on a day-to-day basis, both to be a good Catholic member of the community, but also a person who can take that faith to others.
So all of those help us to know our faith better, and that's really what it's about, is that continual transformation of knowing our faith and so many different aspects of it, and how we apply our faith not only historically but today and looking ahead in the future. And so coming together once a month is a great opportunity where we get to know it together and hear the same message, and then knowing our spouse, it's almost like a date night for most of us, and then knowing each other as Catholic leaders that we had not met each other before. And so there's that common bond to evangelize and to bring Christ into the world and into the workplace.
Mm-hmm. The examples you're using are it's quite a breadth of that really is the Catholic Church, that we address all these aspects, all these concepts.
Yep.
Now, again, back to the idea of when you meet somebody who you think might be a potential, what's your elevator pitch for this person? How do you get them interested?
Would you like to come to a meeting? We have this wonderful speaker, and it's a great group of people. I meet people every day, and I will certainly talk to them about Legatus and what our mission is and what we're trying to accomplish. And when I'm speaking to them, I'm on fire for Legatus. I truly am. I think it's a phenomenal organization of Catholic men and Catholic women who really are doing good for the communities that they're in. And that's my pitch. It's, come and see what we're like. Come and have an evening of confession, rosary, mass, fellowship. We have wonderful speakers that we learn from, that we can take their ideas and their knowledge and go out into the communities and affect other people. It's just a phenomenal organization. It's a wonderful date night, like these men said. It's great.
That's one thing that you pointed out earlier, is the idea that this is couples.
Yeah.
That they're members.
Yes.
That's
Right.
fascinating.
And another topic that we address in our meetings is how to strengthen your marriage.
Right.
Each of the last 2 Februaries, the Valentine's Day celebration, it was a date night to talk about how to strengthen your marriage.
Right.
And last year we heard from the Alexanders. They've got an apostolate down in Texas, and the importance of including Jesus Christ in your marriage, and remembering that we've got a covenant marriage, and that everything you do has to be guided by that covenant. It's not just the two of you, but what's God's will for our life. And they gave some very compelling testimony about that. And again, we had another couple this February talking about how to invest in your marriage.
Right.
We think about investing in our businesses through our time, talent, and treasure. We certainly do that in the communities and with our churches, but you have to invest that in the marriage relationship too. So that's a big piece of this.
Sure.
Right. Well, fantastic. That sounds like a great organization. We appreciate your time and being here. Kate?
Thank you
pleasure to
for
meet
having
you.
us.
Michael?
Yeah, thank you.
Coming.
Yes.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Yeah, and we thank you for joining us here on Catholic Forum. Come to our website and to watch other shows. And may God bless you in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Amen.